Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here and 4Ks. And we talk about our favorite labels. And one of mine has for a long time been Indicator from the UK, who obviously also has a US arm. I'm going to get into some of their stuff here in just one second, but I wanted to touch on a few recent announcements. They have a set called Columbia Horror coming, I believe, in October. And, late October. And this is basically a collection of, looks like mostly Boris Karloff movies. Things like Behind the Mask. Actually, he's not in all these. Black Moon, Air, Hawks, Island of Doomed, Men, Cry of the Werewolf, and The Soul of a Monster. I love their Columbia box sets. I think they're always really interesting and enjoyable. So that's cool. They have something called El Vampiro, Two Blood-Sucking Tales from Mexico. That's coming. The Vampire and the Vampire's Coffin. That's another one that continues their series of Mexican horror. And then they've got some more classic films coming. I'll talk about some classics in the back half of this episode. But things like You and Me with Sylvia Sidney and George Raft from Fritz Lang. When Tomorrow Comes with Irene Dunne and Charles Boyer. You'll Never Get Rich with Fred Astaire and Rita Hayworth. As well as The Lady is Willing with Marlena Dietrich and Fred McMurray. Those are all coming in the upcoming months. But let's talk about some cool stuff. Let's talk about George Romero, and let's talk about BRUISER. Now, BRUISER is a movie from 2000, so sort of a latter effort from Romero, before he does Land of the Dead, which I think was 2005, and I sort of consider that his last best film. But this was one I'd always meant to see, and never quite got around to seeing, partially because of availability. It was on DVD for a while and was out of print, and then wasn't streaming for a period. It may be streaming now, but I was very excited when Indicator announced this 4K UHD version from a 4K HDR restoration of BRUISER, because, like I said, I like Romero. I think Martin is fantastic. Obviously, Night of the Living Dead, Night Riders. I mean, he has a ton of great and interesting movies. The Crazies, Season of the Witch. I mean, he's done so many interesting films. Dawn of the Dead, obviously, is huge, as well as his other Dead films, Day of the Dead, Survival of the Dead. But this one is an outlier in a way. It's like its own thing. But he, I believe, wrote and directed it. And their website says, horror legend George A. Romero directs Jason Fleming, who was in Snatch and Pennyworth. I believe he was also in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. He's one of the original dudes in that, if I recall. Maybe I'm wrong. Peter Stormare and Leslie Hope in the devastating and deranged Bruiser. Very fascinating movie. So they describe it as unhappy with both his home life and his career. Henry, that's Jason Fleming, is plagued by violent fantasies when he wakes up to find his face replaced by a featureless mask, and you can see that on the cover here, at least the one side of his face. He sets about exacting violent punishment on those who have wronged him, featuring music by the celebrated composer Donald Rubinstein, who did Night Riders and Martin. And including an appearance by legendary punk band The Misfits, singing their song BRUISER, I think, which is great. BRUISER was hailed by critics and fans alike as a triumphant return to independent filmmaking for Romero. I think I saw a comparison or two to like American Psycho, because there is a sense of, is this really happening? What am I watching? Is this a fantasy, or is this really now happening? And it's intriguing. So basically the idea is that Jason Fleming works for fudge. I forget what kind of company it is, but Peter Stormare is sort of the quote-unquote genius head of the company who is incredibly unprofessional, just a gigantic jerk, chauvinistic, crude, and just discriminatory, just really awful. And the one, if I have to give any criticism of the film, I would say that the villains in the film, and he is one of the villains, are quite arch. They're quite big in a way. And so that's kind of a tricky thing for me. Jason Flemyng's character is married to this woman, and she's not particularly great either, and says some lines. It's Nina Garberis, I think is her name. Says some lines like, like it's almost reminded me of like the beginning of Happy Gilmore when he gets dumped. Like, you had this dream to, play hockey, but the problem is you're no good, and we're going nowhere, and I'm out of here. It's a little bit more in depth than that, but it's kind of like I was counting on you to, make some strides in terms of your career, in terms of our lifestyle, and you've let me down, and you're a loser, and that, just really mean. So that's sort of the beginnings. You see this Peter Stormare character and the wife character, both pretty awful, and another character played by Leslie Hope that, is a little bit more optimistic, I believe. But anyway, so one of the things is that Peter Stormare's wife does this thing where she makes these masks and has people they have a party and everybody makes a mask, and they're all these sort of faceless, eyeless things. And so, Jason Flemyng's character makes one, and throughout the movie we see him as like the sort of nebbish, nice guy who gets put upon and has a fantasy that's some violent retribution that doesn't actually happen. And as the synopsis says, he wakes up one morning and suddenly that mask is his face, and he becomes like his own id in a way, just sort of like out to get revenge, violent revenge on everybody that's wronged him. And so while the villains are, like I said, pretty big, the vengeance is ultimately satisfying, I would say. But it's a really intriguing movie and an intriguing premise, and I do like George Romero's style and his ideas and, sort of the philosophies he's working out in this kind of movie. And so this was kind of a pleasant discovery for me, and I'm so glad I was able to see it for the first time in this 4K, which looks great. Now, this is just the 4K. This is not a case of, and it's got a beautiful hard box. I absolutely love. It's not a case where they're doing a Blu-ray and a 4K. In this case, it's just the 4K, which is all region, of course. And there's lots of features, which we'll get into here in a second. And there's an incredible book that's included. Not a booklet by any means. And so, yeah, I was just really intrigued by this and where it goes. And Tom Atkins plays a cop in it, which is a nice little addition. And yeah, it's a really, I think, intriguing latter career entry from Romero. Now, it has an original 5.1 surround and 2.0 stereo audio tracks. It has audio commentary with writer-director George A. Romero and producer Peter Grunwald. That's from 2001, from the DVD release, I would imagine, of this. Archival interview with Romero from 2013, 44 minutes. Previously unheard recording of the legendary filmmaker in conversation with disc producer James Blackford. Very exciting. Behind the Mask. This is a new piece, 10 minutes. Actor Jason Flemyng discusses his starring role in Bruiser and his experience working with Romero, so that's very cool. A Perfect Fit, also new, 9 minutes. Dr. Chud, the former Misfits drummer, talks about the band's appearance in the film and its contribution to the soundtrack. The Worm That Turned, another new featurette, 12 minutes. Critical appreciation by Kim Newman, author of Nightmare Movies. Always love to have Kim Newman included on anything horror related and get his sort of overview. That it's usually an appreciation of the film, but also an overview of the filmmaker. And so that's cool stuff. Then we have an introduction by Jean-Baptiste Thoray from 2022, a 10-minute introduction. The French filmmaker and critic looks at Bruiser in the context of Romero's wider career. That's very cool. Bruiser soundtrack demo. This is brand new in terms of it being released. 2 minutes of the previously unheard excerpt of Dr. Chud's unused score. And then trailers, image gallery, new improved English subtitles. Limited edition exclusive 80-page book with a new essay by Craig Ian Mann, an extensive archival interview with George A. Romero, and an in-depth location report, a look at the Misfits Romero-directed music video, and an overview of contemporary critical responses. Worldwide premiere on 4K UHD. So maybe there is a Blu-ray, but not in the States as far as I know. I could be wrong. Just wanted to look at this essay. It's got a nice little chapter of contents, or table of contents. Let's see, 7. So this is the Craig Ian Mann essay. Bruiser is often considered something of an anomaly in George A. Romero's filmography. Even during the film's production, actor Tom Atkins told Fangoria that it was different from George's other films. The filmmaker's first feature since The Dark Half in 1993, so 7 years. It is often described as a psychological thriller rather than a horror film, and was shot in Toronto rather than Romero's native Pittsburgh. However, there is a great deal to connect Bruiser to Romero's larger body of work, a film about losing yourself to a white-collar career. It echoes the openly anti-capitalist themes that are clearly present in several Romero's other films, principally Dawn of the Dead, an all-out attack on American consumerism, and Land of the Dead, 2005, in which the zombie apocalypse is used to allegorize economic disparity in the tale of haves and have-nots at the end of the world. And like so many other Romero projects, Bruiser was well ahead of its time. I agree with all that. So this is a really great release, and maybe among my... Even though the movie didn't, blow me away, I still found it to be a really interesting discovery. And the release is so solid that I would definitely put it on my list of favorites of 2024 so far. It's limited, and I know there was initially sort of a trick in terms of its availability here in the States. Like a lot of the statewide, domestic retailers were having trouble keeping it in stock. I think it's still in stock at powerhousefilms.co.uk, the Indicator website. And so that's very cool. If you want to get it, you can get it there. But yeah, high recommend for Bruiser on 4K. Now, let's move on to this new release of Single White Female that they've just put out. And of course, this came out from Scream Factory a while back, and I'll do a Pepsi Challenge kind of comparison between the two. But for those that don't know, Single White Female is definitely a movie that I think a lot of people remember from a run of great, 90s thrillers. And the website, it's from 92. And this is the UK premiere on Blu-ray, apparently. Bridget Fonda and Jennifer Jason Leigh star in Barbie Schroeder's erotic psychological thriller. When Allie, that's Fonda, breaks off her engagement, she is delighted to find a supportive new roommate in Hetty, that's Jennifer Jason Leigh. But when Hetty's behavior becomes increasingly obsessive and a series of violent events begin to occur, Allie fears that Hetty is not all she claims to be. Beautifully photographed by Luciano Tovoli, who shot The Passenger and Suspiria. I think that's something always to keep in mind with this movie, is it is beautifully shot. And, when you think about The Passenger for Antonioni and Suspiria for Argento, two incredible looking movies, and this movie looks great. It's got a powerful Howard Shore score, and it's one of the most stylish suspense thrillers of the 90s. Now, this doesn't list the transfer except to say high definition remaster, which would lead me to believe it's probably a similar, if not the same, scan. Now, in terms of what we get on the Scream Factory disc, we got interviews with Barbara Schroeder, actors Peter Friedman and Steven Weber, and screenwriter Don Roos, and an audio commentary with Barbara Schroeder, editor Lee Percy, and associate producer Susan Hoffman. So those two things came on that disc. Now we'll go through right out of the gate. I can see the audio commentary with director Barbara Schroeder and editor Lee Percy, and associate producer Susan Hoffman is included. And then New York interview, Barbara Schroeder, 28 minutes, the director from 2018. It looks like all the interviews are included here. I could be wrong, but let's go through this. So the 2018 Barbara Schroeder interview, 28 minutes, the director discusses the production and release of Single White Female. Upstairs in Graham Knox, also 2018, 8 minutes, actor Peter Friedman recalls his casting and relates some anecdotes from the set. The Fiancé, Sam Rawson, that's 2018, 20 minutes, in-depth interview with actor Steven Weber. And then SWF Seeks Writer, 2018, 26 minutes, screenwriter Don Roos looks back on his adaptation of John Lutz's novel and working with Schrader. So I think that's everything. You get it all from the Scream. Now, on top of that, we also get She'll Follow You Anywhere, a 26-minute interview with the critic, broadcaster, and author of Unlikable Female Characters, Anna Bogutskaya, as she just dissects the film within the context of the erotic thriller. So that's an additional bonus that you don't get on the Scream Factory. And what you also don't get is the included here limited edition 36-page booklet with a new essay by Georgia Humphreys, extracts from contemporary articles on the making of the film featuring interviews with cast and crew, and an overview of contemporary critical responses. Now, this is a Region B locked disc, so you need a multi-region player to play it, but if you missed out on the Scream Factory, or if you are looking for something with just a little bit more, or if you're in the UK, this is definitely worth your time. As it says, one of the great erotic thrillers of the 1990s, that whole run. Now, we've got some classic film titles here that are pretty enjoyable. And I'll start with Obsession. Now, this one is, I want to say, region free. Yes, one of these is region locked, and I'll talk about that. Now, this is directed by Edward Dmytryk. It's from 1949. Dmytryk did a lot of great and interesting films beyond even the classic film era. He did things like Murder My Sweet, Crossfire, The Sniper. These are all great film noirs from the 40s. He also did Walk on the Wild Side, which is totally not a noir, but he also did like Cornered, Bluebeard. These are like all over the place in terms of the release dates. He did Mirage, which I really love, from 1965 with Gregory Peck. Kind of almost a straight version of Charade or North by Northwest. Very interesting movie. Very cool stuff. But so this movie, Obsession, is also known as The Hidden Room, and it is from 1949, and I really kind of dug this. Like, this is a cool undersea noir. It's a limited edition Blu-ray world premiere for this film. And it says when psychiatrist Clive, that's Robert Newton, learns that his wife Storm, that is Sally Gray, is having an affair, he resolves to take revenge by kidnapping and murdering her lover, Phil Brown, and dissolving his corpse in acid. As Bill languishes in Clive's cellar, Detective Finsbury, that is Naunton Wayne, doggedly pursues the case. Written by Alec Koppel, Vertigo, scored by Nina Rota, 8.5, The Godfather, and directed by Edward Dmytryk. During his blacklist-induced exile in Britain, Obsession's original release was delayed due to ongoing court case of the real-life acid bath murderer John Hay. So I guess there's some factual background for this. But it's a great setup because it starts with Newton showing up at his own house and checking the door, and it's locked, and he waits in the bushes, and his wife comes home with another man. That's, of course, what's his name? Phil Brown. And he's like an American, and they come in and they make drinks, and then he just bursts in, and it's kind of like surprises them. Actually, I can't remember if he's bursts in or if he's hiding in the living room where they're making drinks. And they try to play it off like, oh, we just went out, for a very friendly, completely non-romantic dinner or to the theater. And he calls them out and says, look, I know there was no show tonight at all. So he immediately outs them, and his wife kind of keeps trying to play it off, but he knows that she's cheating on him. And eventually he gets her to leave. He even takes a shot at one of them with a gun. And then he takes Phil Brown and puts him not in a cellar, but like it's almost like a garage, but like an extra little house that he has that's away from his regular house. And he chains him up, and he draws a line on the ground so the guy he knows how far he can reach. And then he keeps him there, and he's working out this acid that will dissolve skin and bone, and he's transporting it from this lab he has. I guess he's like kind of a scientist or something. And he's transporting it like a little bit at a time, slowly filling this tub in the other room. And then things start to get complicated. And I won't go into those complications because they're kind of fun to watch unfold. And the story is tricky to know where it's going to go, who's going to end up on top or not. But it's a very enjoyable noir, and I totally dug it. And this is a new 4K restoration by Powerhouse Films. Audio commentary with film historians Thurza Wakefield and Melanie Williams, brand new. The John Player lecture with Edward Dimitrick from 72. 74 minutes of archival audio recording of the prolific director in conversation with author and critic John Baxter, recorded at London's National Film Theatre. We also have A Man About Film, which is brand new also, 35 minutes. Academic and author Richard Dyer explores the making of the film, its personnel, and its distinctive tone. Then we have the BEHP interview with Gordon K. McCallum, 1988, 99 minutes, archival audio recording made as part of the British Entertainment History Project, featuring Obsession's sound recordist in conversation with Alan Lawson. Limited 36-page booklet with a new essay by Fintan McDonough, archival interviews and making of Obsession, featuring interviews with Dimitrick and Naughton Wayne, contemporary critical responses. I love these booklets from Indicator, maybe my favorite booklets, because they're very thick and hefty, and they are just really nice. You have alternate artwork with no stripes. But yeah, very neat discovery with this classic film. And this one is really interesting too. Now, this one is the region locked one. And it is called The Whole Truth. And it's directed by John Gillerman, who I'm a big fan of. I think he's become one of, if not definitely one of my favorite directors that I've sort of come to really appreciate over the last several years. He did things like The Towering Inferno, King Kong, Shaft in Africa, but I've discovered things like, the Blue Max was one I had seen before and I love, but I've discovered things like Guns at Batazi, Never Let Go, Tarzan's Greatest Adventure, Skyjacked I had seen, House of Cards, just a bunch of great thrillers and action movies, and just a really solid director. And so this one was a discovery for me, and it is really intriguing because it's got some twists and turns to it. I'm curious how it's described here. Let's see. Stuart Granger, Donna Reed, George Sanders, and Italian sex symbol Gianna Maria Canali star in The Whole Truth, a wry suspense thriller set on the French Riviera. When film producer Max, that's Stuart Granger, begins an affair with Gina, that's Canali, the star of his latest production, it isn't long before she threatens to tell his wife, Carol, that's Donna Reed, what is going on. However, the price of Gina's silence changes for Max when she is found. I'm not going to reveal what happens to her. And this is one that I kind of want to let be, but I will say that he's having this affair. She's, gonna maybe expose him. His wife shows up. Donna Reed shows up in the French Riviera, and he's having a party, and suddenly George Sanders shows up, and he says he's from Scotland Yard, and that the actress has been murdered. Now, I'm going to let you watch the movie to find out what's really happened, but he finds himself suddenly in position to have to defend his innocence of the murder that may or may not have happened, and he may or may not have done. And it starts with like a cool sort of boomerang thing where you see him on the run from the cops at the beginning. And you're like, wait, how did this happen? And Stuart Granger's just kind of like, just scummy enough that you're kind of like, you root for him, but maybe, I don't know. And George Sanders is always a scumbag, and he's incredibly scumbaggy in this too. But I love the twists and turns to this, and I really don't want to spoil them. I really enjoyed where this went and how it built suspense throughout, because I really do think Gillerman is a great craftsman when it comes to thrillers and filmmaking in general. So this was a real treat from 1958. Limited edition. This is a Blu-ray world premiere. Audio commentary with film historians Kevin Lyons and Jonathan Rigby. That's brand new. Sinister Smiles. Brand new 18-minute film historian Robert Shale discusses the whole truth, its making, personnel, and reception, and the history of the British production company Romulus Films. The BHP interview with Ronald Spencer. This is from 91. A 48-minute archival audio recording made as part of the British Entertainment History Project, featuring assistant director in the conversation with Joyce Robinson. And it also includes a limited edition 44-page booklet with new essay by Barry Forshaw, archival interviews with George Sanders, Gianna Maria Canali, archival article on Canali and Donna Reed, extracts from film's campaign book, and an overview of contemporary critical responses. Very fun stuff. Region B. And then just a couple more real quick classics. We have The Shop at Sly Corner, which is another one that I didn't know. This is from director George King from 1947. Oscar Homolka, Derek Farr, Muriel Pavlo, and Kenneth Griffith star in this British crime classic, The Shop at Sly Corner. Decius Heiss, that's Homolka, a London antiques dealer, lives a comfortable life fencing smuggled diamonds in order to pay for his beloved daughter Margaret's tuition. However, his young assistant Griffith learns of the arrangement. He begins to blackmail Heiss, unwittingly sparking a chain of events that leads to murder. Very cool. Also known as Code of Scotland Yard, The Shop at Sly Corner is definitely directed by George King. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, the man who helped to launch Todd Slaughter's film career and also marked the film debut of Diana Dors. And this is a new restoration from a 4K scan by Powerhouse Films. Audio commentary new with film historian Josephine Bonning and critic Feng Li. Muriel Pavlo in conversation. This is from 2009. 48 minutes of the British actor discussing her career with Josephine Bonning at London's National Film Theatre. And Humor and Horror, a 35-minute brand new film historian Jonathan Rigby delving into the life and career of prolific Austrian actor Oscar Homolka. This has a limited edition 32-page booklet with a new essay by Steve Chibnall, archival interviews and articles, and overview of critical responses. This is a world premiere on Blu-ray, and this is region free. And lastly, we have another one called Tomorrow We Live. And this is from George King, also from 1942. And it says John Clements, Godfrey Terrell, Hugh Sinclair, and Greta Gint star in Tomorrow We Live, a thrilling tale of wartime resistance. In occupied France, Baptiste, that's Clements, arrives in a small town armed with the details of a German submarine base. As the resistance humiliates the occupiers and the Gestapo exacts deadly reprisals upon the local population, Baptiste works with the local mayor, Terrell, and his daughter Gint to plan his escape to Britain. Released in the U.S. as At Dawn We Die and directed by Todd Slaughter, collaborator George King. Tomorrow We Live shocked audiences upon its release with its unflinching portrayal of Nazi brutality. So I guess that was something of a thing that hadn't been portrayed as much in 1942. Brand new 4K restoration scanned from Powerhouse Films. This is a region-free disc, by the way. Audio commentary new with film historians Josephine Botting and Robert Murphy. Turning Heads, brand new 21-minute film historian Pamela Hutchinson discusses the life and career of famed Norwegian actor Greta Gint. The BHP interview with Roy Douglas, this is from 2005 and it's 39 minutes. Archival audio recording made as part of the British Entertainment History Project featuring composer Douglas in conversation with Alex Gibson. And a limited edition 40-page booklet with new essay by Philip Kemp, archival interviews and articles, and overview of critical responses and film critics. This is a world premiere on Blu-ray. So lots of fun stuff from Indicator, and as I indicated at the top, lots of fun stuff coming from Indicator. So keep an eye at powerhousefilms.co.uk and their socials for their latest stuff. I recommend subscribing to their newsletter. When they announce their new releases, you get a nice email, and it's very exciting every time I get an email from Indicator talking about their newest releases, because it's always something wide-ranging and fascinating and well-curated. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.